So today we will be working with lesson 6.2. In this lesson we're solving inequalities with multiplication and division. As we go through this, you'll notice there's definitely similarities to solving equations with multiplication and division, but there are definitely some wrinkles that we want to be aware of, and we need to be on our toes for this. So just starting off, we just have an inequality, 20 is greater than 15, and if we multiply this by 3 on both sides, you're going, seriously, Mr. Roth, we already know this. That's an honor of max from last year. We know that 60 is greater than 45. Okay, again, kind of continuing looking at this, if we go back to the original, 20 is greater than 15. And if we divide both sides by 5, we end up with something that states 4 is greater than 3. And at this point, everything looks just like an equation. Hopefully we're pretty comfortable with that. The catch comes on this next slide. Okay, and this is when we multiply or divide by a negative number. If I multiply this by -2, and I multiply this side by -2, okay, again I do both the same thing to the inequality on both sides. 20 times -2 gets us to -40. 15 times -2 will get us to -30. If we stop and think about this, we realize that -40 is not larger than -30. So when we multiply by a negative number, we see that we need to change the inequality sign. And this holds true when we're using variables as well. Kind of continuing, taking a look at this. Again, 20 is greater than 15. Back to the aha, Mr. Roth, I know that. If we divide by -5, and we divide by -5, 20 divided by -5 will give us -4. 15 divided by -3, or -5 gives us -3. At this point, if we think of a number line, -4 is smaller than -3. So in this instance, again, when we're dividing or multiplying inequalities by negative numbers, we need to be on our toes and be aware of what's going on. So let's go ahead and try some problems here. This first set I'll work through. Later on, I have some that you can work through. Okay, as we look at number 1 and number 2, please keep in mind that we can undo division with multiplication. We can undo multiplication with division. So as we read number 1, it's t divided by 9 is less than -12. To undo this, we can multiply by 9 on both sides of the inequality. In this case, our 9 is positive, so I don't need to worry about the inequality. It's still going to be a less than sign. Here, 9 divided by 9 becomes 1 and leaves us with our variable isolated. We have t on the left side. -12 times 9 ends up being -108. So we have a negative in our answer, but we did not multiply by a negative. Okay, number 2. Here we have 30 is greater than 1/2 n. Okay, I could read this as 1/2 times n, or sometimes we can think of it as n divided by 2. Either way, when we're working with fractions, we can go ahead and multiply by the reciprocal. And 2 over 1 is simply 2. So 2 times 30 is 60. In this case, I'm dealing with positive numbers, so my inequality can remain. 1/2 times 2 is 1, so in this case we get 60 is greater than n. I don't want to forget set builder notation. We could say n such that n is less than 60. Okay, that's something that we want to keep in that I sort of neglected in these first ones. We can also, if I go back to number 1, graph our equations. Let's see, we have -108, -109, -107. And just being aware, this is an open circle, and any number is smaller than -108. Okay, looking at our third example. Here we have -3/4 times r is less than or equal to -6. So I have this negative sign out in front. I need to pay attention, and on this one I would go ahead and multiply by the reciprocal. -4/3 multiply by -4/3. Okay, on the left side of the equation, that becomes r. Because we are working with a negative number and multiplying by it, I need to change my inequality sign. So r is going to be greater than or equal to, in this case, -4 times -6 gives us -24/3, and I should make that, sorry, positive 24/3. 24 divided by 3 is 8, so our final answer is r is greater than or equal to 8. If we put this into set builder notation, it looks like this. Finally, our fourth example on this page, -4 times c equals 28. In this case, we're undoing multiplication. I would go ahead and undo that with division. We're dividing -4 divided by -4. My apologies, this should have been a less than sign. When I retype the problem, I hit the equal button. So going back, -4c is less than 28. Okay. When we do this, that reduces and leaves us with c. Because we divided by a negative sign, or negative number, we need to flip the inequality. So c is greater than -7. In set builder notation, it looks like this. And again, we certainly could graph that answer as well, where c is larger than -7. Okay, here they're asking us to define a variable, write the inequality, and solve it. So first, reading number 5. The opposite of 4 times a number is more than 12. We'll just say n equals the number. We could say a number. So we defined our variable. The opposite of 4 times a number. Opposite means, in this case, 4 times a number, 4 times n, is more than. Here we see the is, but I need to think about the whole phrase, is more than. In that case, I have a greater than sign, and then we put 12. This case, it's just solving. We're divided by -4, divided by -4. Because we divided, we need to flip the inequality. 12 divided by -4 is -3. Should look something like that. On the next one, number 6, half of a number. Half n. Somebody might also write n divided by 2. Is at least 26. Okay, it needs to be at least 26. So that's going to be 26 or greater. Okay, or greater than equal to in this case. And again, if we look on page 296, they'll show us this phrase and which way to go. So 1/2 n is greater than or equal to 26. In this case, I'm not working with a negative before our variable, so I can simply multiply by 2, multiply by 2. We get n is greater than or equal to 52. Okay, here we have the Spartan High School Band Booster. They raised more than $5,500 for the Music Scholarship Fund. The money came from the sales of their marching band performance DVDs, which sold for $15. How many DVDs did they sell? Define a variable, write an inequality, solve the problem, and then interpret our solution. So we'll say D equals DVDs sold. So we've defined the variable. Okay. Looking for inequality, they raised more than. So if we go $15 times the DVDs sold, that's going to be greater than 5,500. If we divide by 15, divide by 15, we can leave the inequality the way it is. That's going to give us D is greater than, with the calculator it will kick out our answer, or we certainly could use paper and pencil. We should end up with 366.6 repeating. So the interpretation of this, I'll write in red. They sold at least 367 DVDs. It's hard to sell 6/10 of a DVD, so we just round that answer up. Okay, go ahead, give these ones a shot, see how you do. Hit pause and come back and check your answers. As you're working through, please pay attention to whether or not you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So in this one, divide by 7. M is greater than or equal to 6. Again, if we put it into set builder notation, would look like that. Number 9, divide by 12, divide by 12. The number I'm dividing by is a positive number, so I don't need to change my inequality. Negative 60 divided by 12 is negative 5. In set builder notation, it would look like that. Multiply by negative 15. In this case, I need to flip the inequality. Multiply by negative 15. We end up with negative 150 is greater than G. For graphing purposes, if I wanted to rewrite this, I could, and would help us graph. Set builder notation G such that G is less than negative 150. This case I have a negative 12, so I need, or negative 1/12, I need to multiply by its reciprocal, negative 12, negative 12, flip the inequality, that's going to give us a positive 36, and S, again in set builder notation, S such that S is all numbers less than or equal to 36. So that pretty much sums up the lesson. We'll work on this tomorrow in class.